What's up, guys? Oh my gosh. Uh, you won't believe just what happened. Sorry, it's pretty hard for me to talk about, but probably the best day I've had in 5 years. I just got a call from the President of the United States on my phone, and he signed my full and unconditional pardon. I am now officially pardoned by the President of the United States, 4547, an amazing man that cared enough to call me personally to tell me how much of an injustice this all was, done by the same offices that harassed and prosecuted him. And I'm now officially 100% pardoned.
That was Trevor Milton, the founder and former chairman of the now bankrupt hydrogen truck company Nikola. Nikola went public by merging with a SPAC in 2020. It achieved a peak valuation of $30 billion before generating any revenue. It was later exposed that many aspects of the business were fake. Infamously, they rolled a truck down a hill and tilted the camera to make it look like it was driving on its own. Even after being exposed as a near-total fraud, Nikola continued to operate for another 4.5 years. In February of 2025, the company finally declared bankruptcy. Shareholders, who mostly consisted of novice retail investors, were wiped out, suffering billions of dollars in aggregate losses. Nikola became the poster child of the fraud, excesses, and stupidity of the SPAC era, which lasted from 2020 through 2021. In 2021, Milton was charged with securities and wire fraud. He was convicted in 2022 and sentenced to 4 years in prison. He appealed the conviction and has been out on bail during the appeals process. To date, Milton has not spent a single night behind bars, and now that he's been pardoned, he never will. So why did President Trump pardon Milton? Let's have a listen straight from the horse's mouth.
What was your reason for pardoning Trevor Milton?
Highly recommended by many people that was taken advantage of. He did a business deal like in Utah, as I have it, and I think he was exonerated, and then they brought him into New York, where he had a rough road. I mean, he was exonerated. It was a big celebration. Again, I don't know him, but they say it was very unfair, and they say the thing that he did wrong was he was one of the first people that supported a gentleman named Donald Trump for president. He supported Trump. He liked Trump. I didn't know him, but he liked him. It was in Utah, and they went after him. They went after his family. They went after his businesses. And he was, I believe, exonerated, and then they went after him again, and they brought him this time into Manhattan, and he had nothing to do with Manhattan.
Apparently, Trevor Milton was already exonerated, but the government persecuted him anyway because he supported Trump. Trevor Milton is indeed a Trump supporter. In October of 2024, he donated $920,000 to a pro-Trump political action committee. Milton was charged in 2021 and convicted in 2022. This was long before he ever donated money or publicly supported Trump. The idea that his prosecution was politically motivated is not consistent with the timeline of events. It's also important to note that the money he donated to Trump in 2024 likely came from his sales of Nikola stock. Another interesting fact is that one of Milton's defense attorneys was a man named Brad Bondi. Brad is the brother of Pam Bondi, who Trump appointed to be his attorney general. Over the past few months, Milton has been very active on Instagram, posting many videos where he proclaims his innocence. But what about Trump's claim that Milton was already exonerated before he was charged? What does it even mean to be exonerated before you're even charged with a crime? In this video, we'll take a look at Trevor Milton's story and see whether or not his conviction was justified.
Don't believe everything you hear, and especially if it's from the government. In my sentencing in December of 2023, the prosecutors actually told the judge that they didn't know that there was any trucks being built or on the road with the hydrogen fuel cell. This is wild. Listen to this. It says, Your Honor, my understanding, and this is largely based upon public reporting, is that the electric versions of the truck, not hydrogen, those were never ultimately developed. So what the prosecutors are telling the judge is that these trucks are fake and they were never built. Remember, this is after they dragged me through a trial, wrongly convicted me of a crime I didn't commit, and supposedly they still don't even know if the trucks were built. Well, let me give you the stats on these. You ready? 235 fuel cell trucks were delivered as of October 31st. 258 battery electric trucks were delivered. 1 million miles have been driven on the fuel cell and 1.5 million miles have been driven on the battery electric version. So these guys investigated me for 3 years and sat down with hundreds of interviews with every person inside the company. And you want to tell me that they didn't know these vehicles were real?
Milton argues that he did nothing wrong. Nikola was not a fraudulent company because the electric and hydrogen trucks were indeed developed and delivered to customers. Nikola indeed made a little over 200 hydrogen trucks before it went bankrupt, but it's important to look at the timing. Nikola only began selling its hydrogen trucks in the fourth quarter of 2023. They conducted the first public demonstrations of their hydrogen trucks in the third quarter of 2023. Milton stepped down as chairman in September of 2020 and was indicted in July of 2021. Nikola made its first delivery of a battery electric truck in September of 2021, about 1 year after Milton stepped down. For the next 2 years, the company exclusively sold battery electric trucks. In mid-2023, Nikola's battery electric trucks started spontaneously catching fire. They were forced to recall the trucks and even buy some of them back. They only began production of hydrogen trucks in the second half of 2023, after they stopped making battery electric trucks. While it is true that Nikola eventually made hydrogen trucks, this wasn't until multiple years after Milton resigned in disgrace. The prosecutor's choice of words could have been better, but I believe the point he was trying to make was that during the relevant period while Milton was chairman of the company, Nikola did not develop a production-ready hydrogen truck. In 2019, they did deliver one pre-production prototype hydrogen truck to Anheuser-Busch, and there is a video of it driving. It does not appear that this truck was production-ready, as it never entered production. As we discussed earlier, Nikola didn't start commercial sales of hydrogen trucks until the end of 2023, and this was the Nikola Tre, a completely different model. In Trevor Milton's Instagram video, he references sales numbers for the Nikola Tre, which were not produced until long after he left the company. In an effort to prove his innocence, Milton employs straw man arguments. He points to individual aspects of the business which eventually became real, and thus tries to argue that none of the allegations against him are valid. So let's look at the actual allegations in the indictment and see if Milton is able to disprove a single one of them. The story starts all the way back in December of 2016 when Milton hosted a presentation to unveil the Nikola One hydrogen fuel cell truck.
Gives you a couple snapshots. This is actually in our truck right now. You'll be able to see it when you get in the truck later tonight. You'll see it up on the screens. They're fully functioning screens. Really incredible. We will have a chain on the seats to prevent people from coming in just for the safety. I don't want someone to end up doing something and driving this truck off the stage. So it's a little expensive, okay? You could probably buy a jet with what it costs to build this thing. So we're going to try to keep people from driving off. But this thing fully functions and works, which is really incredible. The cab itself, like I said, you'll be able to go inside. We have a little chain on the front to keep people from hitting the controls because they do work. But you will be able to see all the screens actually lit up and working, which is awesome. It's my pleasure to actually let you guys enjoy the night, see the truck, know it's real, touch it, feel how sturdy it is. You're going to see that this is a real truck. This is not a pusher.
Milton implicitly claims that the truck can drive. Members of the audience were invited to come into the truck's cabin. Milton said they put a chain on the chair to prevent anyone from accidentally driving the truck off stage. This implies that the truck is capable of driving. He also says that all the controls inside the truck work. The government alleged and convinced the jury that the truck did not work. It lacked gears, motors, and a control system. The infotainment system was fake. It was made of tablet computers with screens set to display images of speedometers, maps, and other information. But it was completely fake. They were not actually connected to the truck. The truck could not drive itself. It was towed onto the stage before the event. The screens and lights were powered by external batteries and a power cord running under the truck to the wall. The headlights were operated by Nikola employees via remote control. Recently, Milton published an Instagram video attempting to debunk this allegation.
You're going to see that this is a real truck. This is not a pusher. So I totally stand by this. That truck was not a pusher. What is a pusher? A pusher is a vehicle that never moves, never can move, never has operating parts in it. The Nikola One did. So let's talk about this. The e-axle with the electric motor and the gears, the housing, shifters, everything. Was it there? Yes, it was. Were the batteries there? Yes, they were. Did they function? Yes. What voltage were they? Over 800 volts at the time. Remember, this is 2016, ahead of the world on 800 volt architecture, okay? So no small feat. The airlines, did they function? Yes, they did. Was there a compressor on board? Yes, there was. Was there power steering? Yes, there was. Could it function? Yes. The truck was real. It did function. It was not a pusher. A pusher is something that just doesn't move. It never will move.
Milton does not deny the government's allegation that the truck was towed onto the stage. It's also important to analyze the subtleties of his language. He says a pusher is a truck that doesn't move and never will move. The last 4 words are interesting. And never will move. Why did he say this? Why not just say that a pusher is a truck that doesn't move? Probably because by that definition, the truck displayed in December of 2016 was indeed a pusher. To say that the truck was not a pusher, you have to define a pusher as a truck that will never move. In 2017, the company released the infamous Nikola One in motion video, where the Nikola One is rolling down a hill. As of the time of filming, the truck could not move on its own. The company itself admitted as much following the Hindenburg short report in 2020. If the truck couldn't drive in 2017, it presumably couldn't drive in 2016 either. The first confirmed time that we know Nikola One actually moved was in 2019, when they delivered it to Anheuser-Busch. Milton is apparently trying to argue that because the truck eventually worked, it retroactively was never a pusher, even when it could not yet drive on its own. Milton separately argues that these events from 2016 and 2017 are not relevant to the fraud case, because this was years before the company went public. The government disagrees. Trevor Milton referenced the 2016 unveiling event multiple times in 2020, including after Nikola went public. In July of 2020, he appeared on a podcast where he stated, quote, "Nikola was the first company to actually launch the zero-emission semi-truck back in 2016, unquote. He used the fraudulent 2016 event to build credibility for Nikola when it went public. Claiming that Nikola was able to build a working truck all the way back in 2016 makes the company look more competent than it actually was. The next issue is Nikola's Badger pickup truck, which never entered production. In July of 2020, Milton appeared on a podcast called This Week in Startups. In the interview, he said one of the most bizarre things I've ever heard from a leader of a public company.
I'm not sure exactly the date you announced it. What date did you announce that you're going to take on Ford's F-150 pickup truck and Elon Cybertruck and the Rivian? Rivian is the other. Rivian.
Yep.
Sorry, Rivian. So now you decide, F it, I'm going to create an F-150, the best-selling car in the United States, I think, and obviously the best-selling truck. Why would you take on more work?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So here's the reason why. Our trucks are a gravy train with money. That's where all the money comes from is our big semi trucks, right? The problem is 90% of Americans will never own a semi truck. And so your your portfolio of investors can be very limited. And we wanted to go and build a company that's going to be worth $500 trillion over, say, 10 or 15 years. And if you're limiting yourself to 10% of the market, you'll never do it, no matter how good your numbers are. The reason why people love Apple, everyone touches their product. Why do they love Google? Everyone touches their product. So what I did is I knew day one, once we started coming out, we had all this gravy train coming in from the semi-truck program. My question was, okay, that's great, but I'll never touch the average consumer. So therefore 90% of investors will probably never invest in me. So I needed to touch the consumer. And so the truck is for the profit, the semi-truck, the pickup truck's for the consumer. And the consumer is the one who is part of the Robinhood portfolio, is part of the family office or whatever. And that's where all the valuation of the company comes from.
The purpose of the Badger pickup truck is not to make profit. Its primary purpose is to get retail investors interested in Nikola, so they buy Nikola's stock. In other words, the creation of the Badger pickup truck is the most expensive stock promotion in history. This is a bizarre mindset to have, and an even more bizarre thing to state publicly. It shows how obsessed Milton was with Nikola's stock price. In a separate interview, Milton claimed that Nikola is building the Badger from the ground up. We do our own batteries, we do our own frames, we do our own vehicles from the ground up. Our own inverters, our own infotainment. You know, the cool screens. So ultimately, the entire truck from the ground up is designed by Nikola. The problem is, Nikola lacked the resources and expertise to actually build a pickup truck from the ground up. So instead, they went to a Ford dealership and purchased a few F-150 pickup trucks. They used the chassis and bodies of the F-150s as a base to construct the Badger. They installed batteries and electric motors into the F-150s. Milton claimed that the Badger would be available both as a battery electric vehicle and a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. They put a fake hydrogen fueling port on one of the prototypes despite the fact that it did not contain a fuel cell. In a since deleted tweet, Milton claimed that the water created by the fuel cell would supply a drinking fountain within the Badger. He directed Nikola employees to install a water fountain into the Badger connected to a water tank. The water fountain could not be supplied by a hydrogen fuel cell because the Badger lacked a hydrogen fuel cell. The Badger prototypes lacked airbags and HVACs, and thus could not be legally driven on public roads. On July 3, 2020, Milton claimed that one of the Badger's trims, called the Badger Honey, sold out 1,000 reservations in just 48 hours. You had to pay $5,000 to make each reservation, so Nikola raised $5 million of deposits. And they were receiving 1,500 reservations for the base version of the Badger every day. These reservations existed only in Milton's imagination. On July 2nd, the day prior, Nikola received 124 reservations. On July 1st, they received just 87 reservations. Milton recently published an Instagram video addressing the Badger.
Was the Badger real? Could the Badger drive? Did the Badger drive? Under its own power? This is what frustrates me. It's hard to get the truth out when the media and the government and the short sellers are all lock in step. About 90% of that truck was actually Nikola's, not some other OEMs. Whose e-axle was in the Badger? Nikola's. Whose suspension was it? Nikola's. Was it Ford's? No. The front quarter, the side panels, the rear panels, the tailgate, the bed, were they Ford's or Nikola's? They were all Nikola's. Was there parts on Ford on the truck? Absolutely. There were some parts on there, just like every OEM. Look at Tesla. They used the Lotus chassis when they started. The point is that OEMs share parts all the time. They share airbags, they share power steering, they share shocks, air conditioning units. All of them share. They love to take this out of context and make me out to be a liar and the company out to be a fraud when actually it's every OEM in the world does it.
Milton attempts to refute a straw man argument that is completely different from the government's allegations. The government never said that the Badger could not drive under its own power. They said it could not drive legally on public roads due to its lack of airbags and HVAC. In March of 2020, Milton appeared on an audio-only podcast to talk about Nikola's hydrogen production.
So what we did is we knew that hydrogen was very expensive to produce. Up until Nikola came in the market, hydrogen was around $16 a kilogram, US dollars. Now Nikola is producing it well below $4 a kilogram. We have driven the cost down times almost 4 times. That's how, 1/4 the cost of normal hydrogen production Nikola is now at. So what does that mean? That under $4 a kilogram means that you're cheaper, you're at or below the cost of diesel.
Milton claimed that Nikola is able to produce hydrogen for less than $4 per kilogram. At the time, the prevailing price of hydrogen was $16 per kilogram. If true, this would be hugely valuable. The problem is, it wasn't true. Nikola never created its own hydrogen. They did not have a hydrogen production facility and did not even have permits to build a hydrogen production facility. This indicates that they did not have near-term plans to produce their own hydrogen. The company eventually did build hydrogen refueling stations, but they purchased the hydrogen from third-party suppliers at market rates, much higher than $4 per kilogram. For some of the other allegations, Milton tried to obfuscate with straw man arguments, but for the hydrogen issue, there's really no way to obfuscate, so he just doesn't talk about this. So why did Trump pardon Trevor Milton? He says Milton was exonerated, but I see no evidence of this. His motivations probably have more to do with the $920,000 Milton donated to Trump's presidential campaign. A few weeks ago, we published a video about a crypto bro named Justin Sun. He was facing civil fraud charges from the SEC. He invested $75 million into one of Trump's cryptocurrencies. After Trump took office, the SEC dropped all the charges against him. This seems to be a pattern with the new Trump administration. If you donate large amounts of money to Trump, good things can happen to you. Alright guys, that wraps it up for this video. What do you think about the Trevor Milton pardon? Let us know in the comments section below. As always, thank you so much for watching and we'll see you in the next one. Wall Street Millennial, signing out.